So UFC 298 happened 8 days ago. UFC Mexico City happened last night. And I got some questions on what's going on with the flyweight and the featherweight division because it's going to be hard to map out what the future is going to look like. Ilia Topuria for the featherweight division is obviously the future. He's the champion. But who does he fight next? There's a litany of contenders. My thought was if Yair Rodriguez won last night, it would be Yair versus Ilia. That can sell. You put it in Spain. Two Spanish-speaking guys. They don't really like each other. It'd be a great fight. But Yair Rodriguez looked terrible last night. He had a great first round. And then in round 3, he got subbed by Ortega, who hasn't had a win since 2020. So all of a sudden, featherweight's in shambles. And I know you're thinking maybe Volk gets the next title fight. As a major Volk fan, I don't want to see him get rushed right into a Topuria rematch again. I'm afraid he'll get knocked out, and I can't see that. If you're a true hardcore fight fan, you were sick of seeing Volk get knocked out. I know it's only happened twice, but it's like those have shaved years off of my life. It's so sad to see. I'm not ready for him to go right back into a title match. I'd like him to face some more pillow-handed guys first. But what we're going to do is talk about what the featherweight division looks like, and then we're going to do the same with the flyweight division because Moreno just lost to Royval last night, and the correct decision. I don't want people saying, Robert, it was a close fight, but it was the correct decision. But that also throws a monkey wrench right into exactly what the flyweight division looks like. So really interesting. We're going to start with Ilia Topuria. I think you just give him the Movsar fight. Movsar Evloev, Ilia Topuria, UFC fight in Spain in August, pay-per-view. It's the main event. Two guys that are undefeated. You can promote it that way. I know Movsar's not great at selling fights, but realistically, I think Ilya's going to get it done, and I think you want to give Ilya a fight that he will probably win, so that way he can be set up better for his next match and keep rocketing him into superstardom. I know Movsar's wrestling is good, but Ilya's boxing's good. His wrestling defense is very good, and I think you're going to see how good his grappling really is when he gets tested against Movsar Evloev. Two undefeated guys. I think that's the fight to make for the UFC Featherweight Championship in August, pay-per-view in Spain. Book it. Book it. Ilia versus Movsar Evloev. Now, I guess what that means is what's next for Alexander Volkanovski. So I have a couple notes written down here in the notes, and when you look at Volk, I think Volk should wait. He should wait to fight. He just got knocked out for the second time in a row. He took a fight on 10 days' notice against Islam, which was a dumb decision, but he's believes in himself, and I respect that, but like you put your career in a tough position because now 4 months later you got rushed into another title fight and you got knocked out again and lost your featherweight title. So I want a rest from him. He just got knocked out in February. Give him 6 to 8 months. UFC Fight Night main event in Australia in August, September, something along those lines. Give him, the 6, 7, 8 months and fight someone who's hopefully pillow-handed. I think it's got to be the winner of Calvin Kattar or Aljamain Sterling. Now, I know if Calvin Kattar wins, Calvin Kattar doesn't have pillow hands. He has real deal hands, but I think Volkanovski is better than him, and I think he'll be able to stay on the outside and not get hurt. If it's Aljo, I think his wrestling defense is good enough to stop Aljo from taking the back or getting the takedowns, and Aljo's pillow-handed, so I think he wins that fight. So I think if he waits till one of those guys wins at UFC 300, he takes that as his next fight in a fight night in Australia. If he wins that, it sets him up for another title fight with Ilya, and I like him having more time to rest to do that. Personally, I think Ilya still wins, but I would like to see Volkanovski, and I get he deserves an immediate rematch. It's just as a fan, I don't want to see it, so I'd like to see him have one fight, get his chin back, and then go fight Ilya fully healthy. The next person you got to think about is Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega. So Ortega won. We're going to start with him first. I think you give him an Arnold Allen fight. I'd like to see what he does against a good striker with great takedown defense. We all know Yair has no takedown defense after last night. So let's see him fight Arnold Allen. Let's do this in UFC pay-per-view card in June in London or in England, in Arnold Allen's hometown. This is also a number one contenders fight. So I think you have this person fight Ilya next, and Volk fights in the wings after that. So Ilya, the way it's looking, is it's going to be Movsar. It's going to be the winner of Allen Ortega, and then it can be winner of Volk or Sterling Kattar. So you have that set up for him. Max, I don't know what happens yet because I'm scared. I want to see what happens when he fights Gaethje. I'm afraid he's going to get chinned, and that's the beginning of the end when you start getting chinned by Gaethje. So we're going to hold off on Max in these discussions until we see what happens in April. But that brings us back to Yair. Yair just fought Ortega, lost. He fought Volkanovski, lost. He fought Emmett and won. Emmett's not that impressive of a win. I think he needs to fight down in the rankings at this point, and I want to see him as a striker, fight another striker. I'm ready for Yair versus Edson Barbosa. I think that's the fight you got to make. UFC 301 pay-per-view in Brazil. Make it the featured fight on the card. You know, that card should have Pantoja defending his title, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Then it should have Paulo Costa as the co-main. It should have Edson Barbosa, Yair Rodriguez right there as the third fight. I think that's the fight to make. As far as the featherweight division goes, book all those. We're going to run through them one more time. Ilya versus Movsar. Pay-per-view in Spain, July, August. Then you're going to have Volk versus the winner of Cater Sterling. UFC main event, fight night, Australia, August, September. Then you're going to have Allen versus Ortega, UFC pay-per-view or fight night in June, something in England. And then lastly, it's going to be Edson Barbosa versus Yair Rodriguez, UFC 301 pay-per-view in Brazil. That's what featherweight should look like. I promised you another division. We're going to set that one up as well. This is the flyweight division, and there's so many rematches that happen. We just saw one last night of Moreno versus Royval, and Royval got the better of him. He won 48-47. That was my scorecard as well. I had Royval winning 3-4-5. So at the end of the day, I know he just throws feints at the elbows and the arms, and a couple occasionally sneak through. He's got some good body kicks, but something looked wrong with Moreno. And Moreno keeps fighting these top 5 guys, and I think he has like 6 or 7 losses in the top 5. So what I'd like to see is Moreno fight down a little bit. Now, we're going to get to where he is in a second. So we're going to start with the title fight, and that's going to be Alexandre Pantoja versus somebody at the UFC 301 pay-per-view in Brazil, because he's the only Brazilian guy left that's a champion that's left to fight on 301, because Pereira's on 300. I don't know that this guy deserves a title shot. Technically, he has the win over Kai Kara France, even though I think he lost. But I don't know who else you put him at. I'm going to go Amir Albazi versus Alexandre Pantoja. Stylistically, it's a good matchup. 2 of the stronger guys in the division. Not over technical with striking, but great wrestlers. Got good hands. I think this one ends up staying on the feet. I think Pantoja wins it. I think that is the pay-per-view main event for Brazil. Unfortunately, that's the only title fight you're going to get there. But I think if you stack that card, it could really turn out to be a good card. You include a lot of Brazilians on the top of the card, Paulo Costa, Edson Barbosa, guys like that. You're going to set up the card to do well. I would like to see Alexandre Pantoja, Amir Albazi, 301, pay-per-view, main event. But that brings us to the next fighters. Brandon Moreno just lost. I think he's got to fight down. Now, there's a fight coming up this weekend. Muhammad Makayev, Alex Perez. If Alex Perez wins, I'm going to have to reassess who Moreno fights, because I think he has to fight down in the rankings. Maybe it'd be a Matheus Nicolau. But I think what you need to see is if Muhammad Makayev wins, Brandon Moreno, Muhammad Makayev, UFC, Saudi Arabia, main event on a fight night. I think Saudi Arabia's on June 2nd. That gives them both enough time after this fight to heal up. It gives them 3 months. I think that's a great headliner for that card. Moreno, Makayev, UFC, Saudi Arabia. Puts them in a number 1 contenders match. If you're Makayev, if you're Moreno, I don't think you get a title shot after this, because I think you need to defend more after losing again. But this now brings us back to Brandon Royval, who won last night. He doesn't get a title shot either. He just got ragdolled by Pantoja in December. I don't want to see that. I'm sick of seeing all these rematches without proving that you deserve one. Beating Moreno in a shit fight doesn't get you there. So I'd like to see Royval versus someone he hasn't fought yet. Manel Kape. Manel Kape, I think, is the next thing for this division. Based Manel Kape. I want to see him fight Royval. I think it's a good striking matchup. I think it's a good matchup for Kape. And he's a fresh contender where if he gets this win, he goes up to the 1 spot, and that justifies a title fight. It's a new title fight for Pantoja. That's what we're looking for here. I'd like to see Kape, Royval versus Pantoja. And if Royval wins, he beats Moreno, he beats Kape. That is worthy of a rematch for a title. So I'm okay seeing that. To highlight, it's going to be Pantoja, UFC 301 pay-per-view against Amir Albazi in Brazil. Then on June 2nd, I believe it is, UFC Saudi Arabia, Moreno versus Makayev, main event, number one contender fight for Makayev. And then Royval versus Manel Kopp, UFC Fight Night, co-main event sometime in June. Neither guys have taken much damage recently. Kopp just missed weight for a fight, so he's waiting to get back in the octagon again. I think that's how you do it. The featherweight division's been made. The flyweight division's been made. Let me know what you think.